Welcome back to the number one rated Talking Phillies Sports with Matty B program here on the Edge of Phillies Sports with your boy Matty B on this beautiful, glorious Wednesday afternoon. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we're pre-recorded again. I get it. It sucks. I know. I'm a live kind of guy. But there's a reason for it, and everybody else, of course, knows that reason. I have that Monday time slot, and it's been dominated by awesome Phillies playoff baseball, and it continues to be so. And if the Phillies continue this ride, this magical ride that they're on in the 2023 postseason, and if that means I don't ever do another live show until sometime in early November, then so be's it. If I can get a world championship out of it, so. We are pre-recorded again. It's in actuality Tuesday night on the 17th of October. The episode will air on Wednesday, 18 October at some point, probably in the afternoon, as long as we get kind of some editing done and things taken care of. But fear not, again, I'm not going to leave you hanging. I won't do it. I can't do it. I have too much pride and integrity. So I'm here to recap your Philadelphia Sports Week, to welcome back an old friend who I think is going to be here tonight. He said he would. I have no doubt I have no reason to doubt him. And to kind of, set the table a little bit more for the Phillies Game 2. Flyers season is rocking, or Phillies Game 2 NLCS. Flyers season is rocking and rolling. And we got some Eagles football to talk about. A loss. That's right, man, a loss at the hands of the New York Jets. The 12-game winning streak against the New York Jets is no longer a thing, as the Eagles fell on Sunday at MetLife / the Meadowlands 20-14 in one of the ugliest, sloppiest, most frustrating football games I think I've watched in a long time. And I think a lot of people feel that way. And we're going to get into that with Kyle Quinn, as we'll do the Birds Breakdown segment here in about 7 minutes or so. With him, we'll talk some Jets. Maybe I'll go back in time a little bit and recap. I don't know. We don't have that kind of time because we're like 3 weeks behind, but maybe we'll gloss over some of the games that he missed, and then we'll recap the Jets, and we'll look forward to which, on Sunday night, the Kelly Green game. The Eagles will debut their Kelly Green uniforms from the 1990s, which I maintain in all my years watching this team have been my favorite uniform combinations, color schemes. Awesome. Just a great uniform. It brings me back to a simpler time, not only in my life, but obviously a simpler time when it came to this country and everything that was happening around us and whatnot. And they're going to welcome in the Miami Dolphins on Sunday Night Football with those Kelly Green uniforms in a true test of the Eagles. Listen, they've kind of smoked and mirrored their way through the first 6 weeks. And again, not a popular stance, but I'm taking it because that's what I've seen. They've beaten teams purely based on their own talent. And then, of course, on Sunday, they were more talented than the Jets, but for some reason just decided that they didn't have to play and that they could just show up with their superior talent and not take the team seriously and get a win. Obviously, that wasn't the case as they went down magnanimously to the New York Jets 20-14. And again, one of the sloppiest, most frustrating games that I've ever witnessed in my entire life. So we'll get into that, and then we'll also preview the Dolphins, which again is the start of well, I guess it's the end of the first gauntlet. The way I kind of had this thing wrapped up, I had the Rams, Jets, and the Dolphins. Now, I had Rams, Aaron Rodgers-led Jets and Dolphins as the first gauntlet of the season, and I had the Eagles losing all three of those games. So far, they've won one and lost one. And by the way, I picked it right. For those of you who watched the show last week, I stuck with my guns, and I went Jets, even though the pick was made long before Aaron Rodgers got hurt, and it was going to be the Zach Wilson-led Jets, but I still went ahead with the Jets. I was right, unfortunately. I stuck with the Jets, and I got it right. But this is the end of the first gauntlet. The Eagles, I'm not saying their schedule gets easier after this. No game is easy, especially the way this team has been playing this year. But a real test of what this team is made of come Sunday night. And not the green sunglasses type stuff. Not the, everything will be okay as long as the sun comes up tomorrow morning. It's not I don't think it's that easy here or that simple. There's some glaring issues with this team. Defensive depth, offensive play calling, offensive execution, red zone proficiency, turnovers. I mean, there's some real, and then injuries. There's some real issues with this football team, and we're going to dive into some of that stuff with our main man Kyle Quinn here in about 4 minutes. But before we do, let's get to that segment that I look forward to so often every week. Is the this day in Philadelphia sports history. And again, as I said, today is Wednesday, October the 18th, and I'm going to go all the way back to 1967 for this date or for this moment in Philadelphia sports history. Tonight, or on October the 18th, your Philadelphia Flyers in 1967 debuted as an expansion team in the National Hockey League to a win, defeating the St. Louis Blues 2-1 on the road, ushering in the era of orange. Of course, now we're in the new era of orange, but the Flyers were able to usher in the era of orange on this night, or on October 18th, 1967. Captain Lou, the Flyers captain Lou Agnotti and Ed Hoekstra scored the goals for the Orange and Black as they went ahead to beat the St. Louis Blues 2-1 on this night back in 1967. And poignant that tonight, tonight in real time, in the date that I'm actually speaking to you, the Flyers are actually playing their home opener right now as I speak. So kind of a hockey. I thought it was appropriate hockey themed or hockey themed this day in Philadelphia sports history on this night of Philadelphia Flyers home debut 2023-2024. So there you go. On this night in October 18th, 1967, the Philadelphia Flyers debuted in the National Hockey League to a 2-1 victory over the St. Louis Blues on the road, ushering in the era of orange. And of course, I don't know if it was called the era of orange back then. Again, against contrary to popular belief, I wasn't in the stands in St. Louis in 1967. No, I wasn't. I wasn't open. I went to a lot of games at the Spectrum as a child and as a teenager and as a youngish man in my young 20s. But no, I was not there to watch them usher in their era of hockey in Philadelphia in 1967. I was actually born on their first Stanley Cup year. So, no, second Stanley Cup year. Second one. So there you go. That is your day in Philadelphia sports history, brought to you by the good folks here at Talking Philly Sports with Matty B. And as we wait patiently, he better show, because I had it out with him. That's right. I laid down the law, and no, I think Kyle will be here. But as we wait for Kyle, Sunday's game opened up a lot of issues for me when it comes to this football team. I kept, even though I take this stance as the realist, as I take this stance as the jaded fool, and I'm so, opt to look at the negatives before I look at the positives, I was looking at a lot of the positives, and I was giving the Eagles the benefit of the doubt, but no more. Nope, I am not. Now I'm not giving this team the benefit of the doubt anymore. I went into this season with a blank canvas. I was going to leave the Howie hate at the door, and I was going to focus on my fandom as an Eagle fan. I can't do it anymore, man, because this team kind of stinks for me. They're not the same type of team that they were last year. I don't care what you say to me, and I'm sure I'll get the pushback here momentarily about it, but it's frustrating. It's frustrating, and it's becoming an issue that something needs to be addressed. And then you got the play calling issues with the new coordinators on offense, and the potential regression of Jalen Hurts. You got injuries now kind of creeping up on offense, and of course, there's been some major moves today roster-wise, and we'll get into that with Kyle. But then you look at the defense, which again, I feel as if I was the only one who had very, very high concerns about defensive depth, especially in that secondary starting the season. And now we've had injuries kind of creep into the picture for the first time in a few years. That has taken that, what I thought was not a very deep pool of depth in the first place, and it's made it even more shallower. And then they continuously seem to be going down week after week after week. And it's getting to a point now where, once again, we're left with that ultimate question of how this team was constructed, especially through the draft, and especially how he has in the second, third, fourth levels of this team about standing up and stepping into roles of starters. And it's not looking ultimately good right now. And every week is a new week, and every week is a season and a season and whatnot. And I get all that, and you got to turn the page and move on. But this is a game on this Sunday's game against the Jets. It's one of those games you're going to look back in December potentially and be like, really? We couldn't. If we just would have beaten the Jets, we would have. Something would have maybe given. We have an extra week to prepare. We could rest players an extra week, get ready for the playoffs, that kind of thing. You never want to take games like Sundays lightly. And the Eagles most definitely took that game lightly to a criminal degree, actually, and caused themselves some great stress. And you know what? As the game was kind of moving through and all that frustration and all the bad play, the turnovers, the inability to convert, the vanilla bland play calling, they still had an opportunity at the very end of the game, up by 2 points, to basically seal it. And then Jalen Hurts makes maybe one of the most, ill-advised moves or plays or decisions of his NFL career. One, he never looks off the receiver. He goes right to that receiver that he was going to throw the ball to, and it stays on him the entire game. There's no look off. There's no attempt to kind of feint the look or feint throw. It's a straight, I'm throwing to you. And then Jalen Hurts tries to slide it through double coverage. And it's to a point where I could have intercepted that football and returned it for the Eagles or for the Jets and set them up for the game-winning touchdown. I mean, that's how egregious that interception was. And it's again, it's to me, it seems that the Eagles were attempting to win this game yet again on their talent and not necessarily on their ability to execute football plays. And you can't do that in the NFL. I don't care. This is the top of the top, 1% of the 1%, and you got to be like that, and you got to play like that. So here, when Kyle joins me, which I have every faith and confidence that he will, I'm going to bring him on, and we're going to break into the Eagles, and we'll break down this game. But I guess the show must go on. So again, I have faith and confidence Kyle will be here. He had legitimate reasons. He was sick last week. I get all that. So let me get into this. Let's start. I guess it's okay to turn the page on the Eagle. We'll come back to the Eagles, and we'll move to the Phillies right now. So as I record this, it is about an hour or so before the start of Game 2 of the NLCS against the Arizona Diamondbacks. Phillies are currently up 1-0. Now, by the time anybody sees this episode, Game 2 would have already been played. So I'm not going to sit here. I'm feeling that they're going to win. Merrill Kelly's going to go for the Diamondbacks here tonight, and he's going to be opposed by Aaron. Cross my fingers. He pitches like the NLDS and the Wild Card Series, not like the NLCS and the World Series of last year. Nola will go for the Phillies, trying to follow up yet another dominant start by Zach Wheeler last night against the Diamondbacks, where the Phillies won 5-3 in a game that was not a game that had excitement, had energy, passion, home runs galore, but also a lot of the old Phillies issues, the leaving runners in scoring position, the not being able to kind of get a pitcher that's on the ropes and finish that pitcher, and leaving a team kind of hanging around. And then when Wheeler did kind of crack a little bit there in the 6th and gave up that 2-run home run, we have a game. And the talk around town today has been kind of gravitated around, I don't care. And I don't care if it's 2-1, 1-0, just as long as at the end of the day it's a win. I understand all that. But to sit here and tell me that that's what you really want, that you don't care that the Phillies are sweating out games, or those 11-0 blowouts, I don't want those, man. I want to sit there and bite my fingernails down to the nub and age 50 years every time I watch a Phillies game this postseason. You're putting me on, man. And not only you're putting me on, you're putting you on, because that's not true. Again, we're sitting here trying to make excuses and trying to mask some of the issues that this baseball team has. And I am 100% in on the Phillies making a deep run. And I believe that they are a better team than the team that made the deep run last year, and that they could potentially have a better chance at winning a World Series right now. And I honestly do believe that the winner of this series here, the Phillies and Diamondbacks, is probably going to be your World Series winner. Because, if the Diamondbacks somehow rally back, they're still the hottest team in baseball right now. Yeah, I don't care what the Texas Rangers are doing right now. The Diamondbacks are that sneaky hot that, no one's taking for serious. they're going to come back and creep up on you and bite you on the butt. Whereas if the Phillies win it, the Phillies have done their due diligence. They've learned from their mistakes of last season, and they've come in focused, laser focused, and they've done what they had to do to get themselves in a position to finish the job they started last year. So I do firmly believe that the winner of this series will eventually go on to win the World Series. And of course, I heavily want it to be the Phillies, but there's certain issues and aspects of this team that I still don't feel good about, and I haven't felt good about it all season, and it's okay for me to feel that way, even during this rush of red fever. It is. Again, being part of the Fightins final and loving every minute of that, I have the the privilege to be very intently involved in what's happening in night after night after night with the Phillies, and seeing how a lot of these games have kind of wrapped up, and seeing how some of these games have played out. And I've seen it over the course of the last 2 seasons, the frustrations that this team can put you through, and it seems to center around specific areas. And the number one thing, and yeah, I'm going to keep saying it until my damn eyes bleed, is the runners in scoring position. The Phillies are horrible. Maybe that's not the word I want to use. No, I don't want to use the word horrible. They're inconsistent. They're the definition of inconsistent when it comes to moving runners in that are currently in scoring position. And again, I'm not going to sit back and bore you with the 2023 numbers. I'm going to sit back and bore you with the 2023 postseason numbers. Because right now, through 7 games, Phillies are 6-1 this postseason. Through 7 games, the Phillies are 14 for 65 with runners in scoring position. That totals out to a hefty 215 batting average with runners in scoring position. Now, what is offsetting that and what is not creating a complete panic in the city right now is the fact that the Phillies, through 7 postseason games this year, have belted 16 home runs to a tune of about 2.5 a game. It's their average, man. I mean, they are knocking the absolute snot out of the ball. But is that a recipe to win a championship? Is that going to continue over the next 7 games? Or I should say 7 wins, not 7 games. Eventually, and I hate to say this, and I pray to God that I'm wrong, but I do believe eventually, the Phillies are going to have to pay the piper when it comes to driving runners in scoring position. It happened last year against the Astros in the latter part of the series. After the big offensive, the 5 home run game, I think it was game 3 or 4. Then they found themselves in a position where they were up against superior pitching, and they couldn't get the home run ball, and they couldn't drive in the runners either. And we saw how that worked out. It's got to be fixed, and I don't know how to fix it. And I don't know if Rob Thompson cares enough to fix it. Maybe he's resigned himself as well to believe that this team is a certain way and to just live with it and just accept it and be super cool with it. I don't know. But something I think has got to be handled about it. Something I think has got to be reversed. And last night I had the privilege of being on the final with Al. And when he, to his credit, man, he was wearing the ultraviolet red sunglasses and kept going back to the win is a win is a win. It is a win. It's right. But you can't not help yourself but look at some of the right below the surface issues. 14 for 65 with runners in scoring position through the postseason, 215 batting average. They've driven 16 home runs out of various ballparks around the National League this postseason, and they've only given up 4 as a pitching staff. So they're getting the good pitching. We already know that. Their strikeouts are also up a little bit, 64 through 7 games this postseason, averaging over 9 a game. Again, I guess that's another stat that I have to resign myself into thinking that's the new era of baseball, which I never will. They've scored 36 runs in this postseason so far against 13 given up. So they're averaging over 5 runs a game, and they're giving up less than 2 a game. So obviously it's balancing itself out. I get all that, and it's working out in our favor. But statistically speaking, and the law of averages speaking, You don't want to live by the home run ball. It's not a way to live because it can go as quickly as it comes. But here's another number that completely boggles my mind. Since August, since September, no, since August 1st, 2023, the Phillies, to include this postseason, have hit 122 home runs. That's absolutely ungodly. 59 in August, 47 in September, and so far, as I mentioned, 16 here in October. So it's balancing out, and maybe I am contradicting myself. Maybe I'm a fool. Maybe I'm a waiting for the other shoe to drop kind of guy, and maybe I'm just being paranoid. I don't know. Because even though, as I sit here and tell you, it's not a good way to live, it seems the Phillies have been living like this now for quite some time, at least since August the 1st. But right now, the Phillies, and again, the excitement, the electricity, the energy that's being garnered from this postseason run has been amazing. They've gotten superior, absolute superior starting pitching from Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola, and Ranger Suarez has done his diligence up to this point. They're going to have to go to the well a little deeper in this series and beyond. Now that we need to take 4 to win a series, so does Taijuan Walker or Christopher Sanchez, are they the next man up? Are they the next new greatest story to come out of this? I hope it is. And I truly, truly do hope it is. And that we can continue this thing going at least for another few more weeks into the World Series and beyond to a championship. But as I sit here, 1-0, about a half hour or so away from the start of game 2. Again, when you guys see this episode, game 2 would have already been played, and it could be 2-0. And if it's 2-0, I think it's lights out for the Diamondbacks, honestly. But hopefully that's what it is. Hopefully it's 2-0. So there's your Phillies in a nutshell. And don't forget, here on the Edge of Philly Sports, we got you covered all throughout the National League Championship Series. Again, me and Al had the privilege of covering game 1. Game 2 is going to be Pat and Mike. Game 3 is Mike and Al. Game 4 is going to Pat and Mike, and then game 5, if necessary, yours truly and Big Al from the studio. Yeah. I'm going to grace the EOP studios with Matty B's presence. Yep, I'm gonna take the plunge. Speak like my 3rd time ever going into the studio in the 2 years that I've been with this network. But that's the plan. And here's an extra special plan. If the Phillies somehow find their way to a game 4 sweepage of the Diamondbacks, Matty B, is going to be going out to the people. That's right. I'm going to hit the streets of my neighborhood in Northeast Philly, Mayfair, where I am from. And I will be parked up on Frankfurt and Cottman Avenue and witnessing the festivities for myself and reporting back, maybe, if it all works out, maybe, to the studio. And if I live, and updating everybody on the good times that are being had in a very iconic celebratory spot in the heart of downtown Mayfair. So hopefully that's the way it works out. But that's going to be later on, of course, in this week. Game 4 Game 4 on Friday night, and as I said, if it works out that way, it'll be me out there. And then game 5, I will be in studio. So it's only going to happen if the Phillies are able to sweep it. If they don't sweep it, then I'm not hitting the streets. But maybe for the World Series, maybe I'll jump on the World Series and be able to satisfy that issue. But right now, as I continue to wait for Kyle Quinn, and I believe he's coming, I really do, and I am going to lose faith because he's a man of his word. I guess we can move now to. There's things that we can talk about. That's the issue. See, we keep. He'll be here in a second. See, communication. So, Kyle will be joining me here in about 2 seconds. I think he's figured it out, or I need to do better communicating with him about where I'm sending these things. But yeah. So Phillies fever has gripped the city, and the Eagles as we get ready to start here. It's frustrating. It's frustrating dealing with the Eagles. It's frustrating seeing how things have kind of, you know, uh, manifested over the course of the first 6 weeks or so of the season. And as Kyle joins me, and I hope I get a biased opinion. I hope I don't get the 94 WIP Kyle. I hope I get a Kyle Quinn who's a smart young man who knows what he's talking about. I hope we can engage in intellectual conversation here on the program tonight, not homerisms. I'm really getting tired of that stuff. But yeah. So we'll give Kyle a few more minutes to join us. Again, I apologize for this. And look at that, from my mouth to God's ears. So here's the issue. I got to do better communicating. I'm sorry. I sent that to you like this afternoon.
No worries, buddy. It's all good.
All right, Kyle. Welcome back. It's great to have you back, Kyle. I missed you over the last couple of weeks, and it's great to have you here. I want to kind of dispatch with going back in time because there's a few games we can kind of recap, but let's jump right into the business of the day. And before all the great news today, I don't know if it's great news, but we'll discuss that. Sunday at the MetLife Meadowlands in New York, New Jersey, up 95 there. Eagles might have played one of the worst games they've had as a collective team in about 3 years, maybe since the 2020 season. Jalen Hurts might have actually played his worst game as a quarterback ever in his entire life. Kyle, why did the Eagles come out so lifeless against a team that they were far more superior against?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure that they came out lifeless, and I would agree that was one of the worst games I've seen in the Sirianni and Jalen Hurts era. I don't necessarily think it was the worst game that Jalen Hurts played. I thought he actually had a pretty solid first half, and definitely just the first half. But by the third quarter, I think everything just fell apart. And these are kind of like, say what you want about Zach Wilson, but this is kind of what the Jets do to teams. They kind of grind you down and they play defensive football. They did this to the Chiefs. They did this to the Bills. They beat the Bills this way. And they're 3-3. I mean, the Jets aren't like the worst team in football, like I think a lot of people made them out to be during the week. Now, that's not excusing how the Eagles played. The Eagles should have beat them. They had a lead. They had plenty of chances to put things away. But I'm not so sure that it was one of those panic, everything is a disaster game. I think it's more so just like that's football. You saw it happen around the league a lot this week. A lot of teams weren't playing their best football. You get beat when you do that sometimes. So I think that's kind of just what happened to the Eagles there. I mean, the defense played great. It was really just the offense, Jake Elliott, things just weren't really bouncing their way on Sunday.
So Jalen Hurts, 28 for 45, 280 yards, a touchdown, and 3 interceptions. And you're going to tell me that you don't think that was his worst performance as a quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, no, it definitely wasn't, because one of the interceptions was, I think, what was it, off of Dallas. Dallas Goedert dropped it, went off his foot. Mm-hmm. I mean, really, the last one to Dallas Goedert was a really, really bad interception. But the other two, I mean, are hardly even his fault. I mean, he had a couple nice deep balls that A.J. Brown just stopped running on, and that would have been a touchdown if A.J. didn't just stop running. So, and even the beginning of the game, I mean, Jalen Hurts had stiff-armed that dude and threw a freaking rocket to convert on that third down, and they were driving up and down the field in the first half. So, no, I would definitely say that it's not the worst game I've ever seen Jalen Hurts play. He's played much worse games in his first season.
Kyle, let's also take another look at that passing line. 45 attempts. That's an ungodly a large amount of passing attempts for a team that's so prolific. They've had DeAndre Swift, who has really been a stalwart when it comes to carrying the football. DeAndre only had 10 carries on Sunday. Why do you think the disparity between the passing and the rushing attempts this week?
Well, I think at least at the very end of the game, it was kind of head-scratching that they weren't going and trying to bleed clock, especially when they had a couple score leads and the Jets weren't really doing anything on offense. But going into this game with the Jets being down 2 of their top corners, you look at this game and say this is a game where AJ and Devontae can go out and win you the game. So I don't necessarily disagree with the game plan of the Eagles trying to win by throwing the football, especially because the Jets have a really good defensive front, and the Jets were stopping DeAndre Swift and they were stopping the Eagles' run game to a certain degree in the first half. So I mean, it's sort of, I just think, what the game dictated. But at the end of the game, I know they had that pass on third down, but I mean, look, this is what you paid Jalen Hurts all this money for. This is what you paid AJ Brown for and traded for him for. So I mean, if you're not putting the ball in their hands to go win you a game, then I just don't really, I don't know what you want from them, to be honest with you.
You mentioned Devontae Smith had a couple drops on Sunday. A couple interesting plays. I heard a very interesting theory around that. Is it because of his lack of targets this year that he's really maybe just not paying attention out there as sharp as he usually is, or is that just that's just fan talk?
I don't think so because, I mean, in that game against the Jets specifically, he had 11 targets. He just didn't do anything with them. I mean, Devontae flat out stunk in that game against the Jets. I'm sure he knows it. But no, I don't think it has anything to do with his lack of targets. They all know going in that this is in this offense that you sort of have to, I don't know about wait your turn, but you have to sort of earn every single touch, every single target when you go out there with as many good guys they have out there. So I don't think there's any issue with that. Devontae Smith not staying ready. I just think he just had an awful game. I mean, he admitted that after the game. He said, you just got to catch the effing ball. And he's right. I mean, he just has to catch the ball. So I mean, he wasn't doing that on Sunday.
Now, obviously, he wasn't alone. Absolutely was not alone. So just to remind the folks back at home, Kyle, you picked the Eagles to win 24-10. You had Jalen Hurts as your MVP. I picked the Jets to win 24-21. And I had Zach Wilson as my MVP. Now, last week on the show, you weren't here, and you can run the tape back. You'll hear it. I picked the Jets way back in August with Aaron Rodgers. That's who I thought they were going to win. Now, I said openly that I didn't believe Zach Wilson was going to orchestrate a win against the Eagles, but I wasn't going to change my pick because I'm a man of character and intestinal fortitude. So I stayed with the pick. And it turned out that, I kind of hit. So not that I'm happy about it, but the old Matty B knows what he's talking
By the
about.
way, Zach Wilson was not the MVP of the game. So
no. Zach Wilson was not the MVP, but that's who my MVP was. So at home, I am now 5-1 on the season. You're now 4-2, Kyle. So interesting turn of events here.
I'll be back. We'll see how this week goes. I have a feeling we might be on opposite sides.
I think we might be as well. All right, Kyle. Let's take a look. One last look around this game, and then we'll move on to the aforementioned Dolphins game. For the game, the Eagles were five more penalties, 46 yards. They bring their totals up to 34 penalties for 275 yards. Not a number that jumps out at you like, but it's getting a little concerning with the penalties, especially some of the penalties that I saw. The worst penalty of the day, Kyle, was the Ringo penalty on special teams. Would you not agree?
I mean, sure, yeah. I mean, but these are like I don't know. The penalties that I'm seeing, it's not like they look like they're an undisciplined team. I mean, Ringo's just a special team where he made a stupid play. Like, I just think sometimes that happens. They're not like, I don't think the Eagles are an egregiously penalized team.
No, I don't either. But as I said, the numbers it's rising, and it's starting to I'm starting to pay attention. So they didn't force any turnovers on Sunday. That is now the third game in a row that the defense was unable to take the ball away. That is not good either. The Eagles were predicated last year on taking the football away. They did it just about as best as anybody in the league did last year. Is this potentially because of maybe lack of talent on that defensive side of the ball this year? Lack of is it a lack of John Gannon because of them not getting the ball away? I mean, where do you target this? Where do you lay the blame or lay the reasoning around why the turnovers have ceased over the last 3 games?
Our turnovers are a fluky thing. I mean, they sort of come in waves. Like they progress back to the mean. If you have a lot of turnovers one year, you're not very likely to have the same amount of turnovers the very next year. And I mean, I don't know like what the insinuation is about the defense, but the defense was outstanding against the Jets this week. I mean, they allowed 1 touchdown, and that's because they let them go into the end zone at the game. Other than that, they stopped the Jets every step of the way. So the defense was excellent with the lack of talent. I think Sean Desai's done a actually really, really good job. I think he did a really good job against the Rams before too. So given what he's dealt, I think he's done a really, really good job. And I think he did a good job last week. And the turnovers will come back. I just, you might go a few weeks without them, and then you'll get like 3 in a game or something like that. That's just sort of how they work. That's how turnovers go in the NFL.
Yeah, no, there's something to that, but I'm not necessarily my concern is not necessarily over what the performance was in the Jets game or lack of turnovers in the Jets game or the other 2 games previous to that. Is that as we move deeper into the schedule and these games get a little bit more tighter against better competition, you definitely want the trend of forcing turnovers to be on your side. You also want the trend of not committing penalties to be on your side as we get into the meat and bones of the schedule. And that's kind of all I was intimating with that.
No,
it's not necessarily
I don't disagree, but I mean, you want to go into every single game you play and win the turnover battle. Like they turned it over 4 times to the Jets, and they didn't force a single turnover, and they lost by 1 score. So I mean, right at that right there.
Absolutely. I agree. I definitely agree with what you're saying.
Yeah,
100%.
I mean that you got to win the turnover battle every week.
This week, the Eagles scored 14 first half points and they scored 0 second half points. On the season right now, the Eagles are averaging 15 first half points and 12 second half points. So that
Who
number's
cares? No one cares but you.
You're damn right. I care very much. And they also committed 4 more turnovers, now bringing up the total to 9 on the season. A number that I can't live with in any way, shape, or form. That number needs to either stay there or I know you can't work the turnovers off. But Kyle, Jalen Hurts has had his interception issues, but the team itself seems to have a little bit of a case of the dropsies. Again, is this a something that's concerning you at this point? 9 turnovers through 7 games or 6 games?
I mean, it sucks, but again, like they're 5-1. Like, so if it doesn't continue, like I said, I think they're kind of just like a fluky thing. They come in bunches. Like, I think eventually they're going to stop, or the number is going to start getting lower of how many times they turn it over a game. I think you'll start to see those numbers shift a little bit. So no, I mean, it's not a concern until it's like freaking week 15, and it's just like, oh my god, all this team does is turn the ball over. I don't think it's going to get to that point.
And then they got to Zach Wilson 2 times for 12 yards, bringing up, or no, I'm sorry, Jalen Hurts got sacked 2 times for 12 yards. Jalen Hurts now 14 sacks on the season. The defense got to Zach Wilson 5 times for 30 yards. Now sacked the quarterback 20 times. So that's very good stuff. The Jalen Hurts stuff. Kyle, again, I don't like certain play calling of this team. I don't like the creativity of Brian Johnson at this point, especially as we get closer down to the red zone. I went over some red zone numbers. They're 10 for 22. They were 2 for 3 this past weekend. 10 for 22 on the season. Not horrible, but this team was laser focused in the red zone last season with creative offensive play calling, RPOs, a lot of misdirection type stuff. That none of that is happening right now. And is it Jalen Hurts? Is it Brian Johnson? Is it the receivers? Is it all aspects of this offense? Where is the problem, in Kyle Quinn's opinion?
I think a lot of it has to do with play calling and the offensive guys, including Jalen Hurts, adjusting to the play calling. I mean, I think they would all admit, Kelsey's said it a bunch of times. I talked about it on this show a few weeks ago that the red zone is pretty much the difference between the team this year and last year offensively. And you talk about the second half points. Well, they didn't need to score a lot of second half points last year because they were getting out to early leads in games. Because when they got down to the red zone, they got in the end zone. So they're not doing that this season. That means they're in these tight games later on, and that's why they're having to continue to score. And they're not doing the same thing where they can just let their defense pin their ears back and just play their game and bleed clock. So that's why you're seeing it a little bit different. And yeah, it's the weakest point of the offense, probably the weakest point of the team so far, is that they struggle really heavily in the red zone. That 100% needs to change.
Agreed. And I guess we can put the bow on this one and let's turn the page, Kyle, because we got ourselves a Sunday night matchup coming up here this week. God forbid we play a 1 o'clock game. We don't have any of those. We have 2 more of those left. But the Kelly Green uniforms, Kyle, are being broke out against the Miami Dolphins. How excited! Uniform guy, Kyle. So don't sit up here and I hope you posture any way you want, but you've made it very clear to me that you're not a big uniform kind of guy. But is it special for you tonight or this week to see them wearing Kelly Green?
I think it'll be cool. Yeah, I mean, like the fact that they'll date them up a little bit so that it looks old school, and the team will be wearing the old school stuff. Like, I can get down with the throwback stuff. You know what I mean? But like, if you're talking to me about whether they're wearing green or they're wearing white, like, whatever. But like, if they're doing something special, I can get down with that.
Well, the Eagles will be wearing something special. They'll be wearing their Kelly Greens. The Dolphins going in the all white. The weather on Sunday is going to be a typical, beautiful, clear autumn evening in Philadelphia, about 50 degrees game time temperature. Kyle, we got some roster moves made this week, today, actually, as we're talking right now. This is a pre-recorded video. It's not going to be shown until tomorrow, but Julio Jones is now a Philadelphia Eagle. Obviously, this is not a needle mover like it would have been, say, 5-6 years ago, but how do you feel about adding Julio to this wide receiver room? And can they exist? Can AJ and Julio exist again as they did in Tennessee?
Yeah, I mean, of course. Julio Jones isn't coming here to be a number 2 wide receiver or anything close to that. I think you look at him more as a guy that's might barely even see some snaps, like Quez Watkins almost. They just put Quez Watkins on IR today, so yeah. I think I would look at him more as just like a corresponding move to that, and he's just a guy that's available off the street. And I mean, he's nowhere near the guy that he once was, but I will take any any old body over Quez Watkins at this point, especially an injured Quez Watkins. So I'm okay with it. AJ Brown seems to like the move. He's the one that I think pushed to bring him into Tennessee. So him and Julio are close. I know Julio's a Bama guy, so they got that kind of connection going with Devontae and Jalen Hurts. So maybe some good vibes there. But I don't think it's that big of a needle mover. Maybe they'll try and use him in the red zone. He's a big body, but then again, Julio isn't exactly known for scoring touchdowns throughout his career, even in his prime. So I don't know. We'll see. I think it's worth a flyer, to say the least.
No, absolutely. If it was out there, take it. I agree. And of course, the reasoning around all these flurry of roster moves, and Eagles also welcomed back a long time kind of roster guy, Josiah Scott, the cornerback, has returned to the fray this week, replacing again, trying to help out that very banged up secondary. Let's get into the injury report as we do here on the program. Now it's early in the week, so a lot of these are from yesterday's game or from Sunday's game. But Cam Jurgens obviously is IR. Justin Evans on the IR. Quez Watkins, you mentioned, now on IR. Bradley Roby, who just got here, is dealing with an injury issue, shoulder issue that he suffered in Sunday's game. Eli Ricks, questionable with a knee problem. The big one is Lane Johnson and his status with his sprained ankle day to day, I guess, at this point. X-rays have been negative, I've been told. Reed Blankenship also dealing with a knee or ankle problem. He's questionable. Jalen Carter was out on Sunday, questionable. Sidney Brown, questionable. Darius Slay out, questionable. And Tuolapu as questionable as either. Kyle, there's a lot of questionables going on with this team's health right now, and this is not something that's been here. I mean, we talked years ago, or 2 or 3 years ago, Kyle. This was the theme of the Philadelphia Eagles, but the injury bug went away. Seems it has returned here in 2023.
Yeah. Injuries are one of those sort of come in bunches, come in waves, and I mean, you can't really predict them year to year, and you regress back to the mean that way. Last year in the Super Bowl, they had 22 with 22 starters starting. This year, that's, I mean, probably nowhere near likely to be the case. So you just kind of got to hope, especially with a guy like Lane Johnson, that he can come back out and play. Now, it sounds like it's good news with him, with the x-rays being negative. It sounds like he's going to at least try to push to play Sunday. And if not that, then you would imagine you would see him the next week. So that's a good thing. You know how hard it is for this team to win without Lane Johnson. And then, so, I mean, they just flat out need to get healthier in the secondary. It's getting tough on them, but you just gotta cross your fingers and hope.
Now, a lot of these questionables will probably be goes at game time. So, I mean, but the big one obviously is Lane Johnson. There's no replacing Lane Johnson along that offensive line. It's just a matter of maybe getting creative with some of the blocking schemes and maybe getting some help over there. Jack Driscoll, I guess, is the next man up in that position. Not been real favorable returns so far on Driscoll as an Eagle. Is he up to the task of replacing Lane Johnson?
I mean, probably not, because like you said, you don't really replace Lane Johnson. I mean, it's a tough spot for him, and I throwing him in the middle of a game, like that, he's not preparing, and the Jets have a really tough defensive line, so of course they were going to have a good defensive coach, so they were going to go after Jack Driscoll. So yeah, I mean, it's not just going to be something where he can step in and replace him. Just got to kind of hope that with a week of preparation and more time to sort of be there with the line during practice, that he's a little bit better, and maybe they do some stuff to help him. Who knows? But that's another thing where you just kind of got to cross your fingers and hope Lane's okay.
And on the Dolphins side of the field, Connor Williams, their guard, is listed questionable after Sunday's game. Chris Brooks, the running back, is questionable. Xavier Howard, their cornerback, is questionable. These are all after the game on Sunday. Of course, Jalen Ramsey is still dealing with his injury that he suffered surgery they had back in July. And Devon Kane is now out on IR. So Dolphins kind of dealing with some issues too, but they are going to get Jalen Waddle back this week. And that leads me to my next segment here, which is our summary. Under the bright lights of Sunday Night Football, Kyle, with the Kelly Green uniforms, what do you think happens down there at the link?
I think that a lot of people are way too down on the team after what happened against the Jets, and I think they're going to play a really good game against the Dolphins. So I think it's going to be close. I don't know if it's going to be like shootout. I think the Eagles defense is actually going to do a pretty good job against the Miami offense. So especially being that we're home, and the Dolphins are going to have to travel up here and play in the cold weather. So I think it's not going to be like this crazy shootout like a lot of people might expect it to be. I think we might have to grind out a little bit of a win, but I think they will be able to do that at the end of the day.
I agree, but I disagree too. I think Tua and the Dolphins were licking their lips to take a shot at this Eagles secondary, and obviously with Hill and a return Jalen Waddle, it might get ugly. It could get ugly for the Eagles, or it couldn't. We'll see. But I definitely think they're going to take their shots against this Eagles second.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to go in there and prevent big plays. It's what the Miami Dolphins do, and not only through the air but on the ground too. They run it really well with Raheem Mostert. So,
and then I think my biggest matchup issue for the Eagles this week is Brian Johnson against the rest of the room. I think Brian Johnson he needs a game. He needs to have a stable game where he's making all the right calls and getting back to maybe watch film from last year. I don't know what he's got to do, but it's got to get more creative with Jalen Hurts down there, especially in that red zone.
Yeah, I mean, he just needs to be able to have. I don't know if it's film from last year. I think what defense they're doing is watching the film from last year and having a counter to it. Brian Johnson needs to have the counter to that. I mean, that's sort of how this works in the NFL. Some guys are able to do it, some guys aren't. It's just going to be a matter of time before we really find out, though. That's for sure.
And what are your 3 keys to Eagle victory?
So I would say that I don't think Miami's defense is very good. In fact, it's not very good. Their secondary is pretty bad, and I think they're a little bit banged up back there with Xavier Howard. I'm not sure what his status is going to be. So I think there's going to be some opportunity there. So my 3 keys are actually going to be about how to stop Miami on offense, with our defense. So the first one's going to be getting to Tua, and he gets the ball out super, super quick, quicker than any other quarterback in the league. So they're going to have to find a way to make sure that he holds on to the ball in enough time for, I think Jalen Carter's going to play and other guys, Hassan Reddick, for them to really get after him. So that's going to be key number 1. Key number 2 is stop Raheem Mostert and stop the run. I mean, Miami gets pretty creative in that way with getting them in space. Raheem Mostert, I know A-Chain he's going to be back this week, you said, right? So
yeah,
that's going to be tough. So the Eagles are going to have to find a way to stop those guys. And then they're going to pretty much do what they've been doing all year, and that's stop the huge explosive, like big plays, like shots down the field. I mean, Tyreek Hill is the main culprit of that. Jalen Waddle can catch and run for sure, but they definitely need to make sure that Tyreek Hill isn't blowing the top off the defense. And I think with Slay and Bradbury both back this week, I think that's going to be cool. But Reed Blankenship's banged up, so they're definitely going to have to be a little bit creative back there to do that.
As Kyle Quinn seen the as Kyle Quinn satisfied to no longer see the Josh Jobe experiment in the Eagle secondary?
I mean, I don't know if I should be satisfied. It doesn't feel like it's going to be over quite yet. I mean, probably don't want to count my chickens before they hatch here.
I mean, how bad is it though right now? It's pretty awful to watch, right? I mean,
yeah, I mean, it stinks, but again, like, it's not like they're getting absolutely pieced up. Like, teams aren't dropping 35 points a game on them. They shut the Jets down, and they played a really, really good game against the Rams in the second half of the week before. It looks like the defense is kind of rounding into form, and they are a really, really talented group. So if they can get healthy on the back end, I think they're a really, really dangerous unit.
My 3 keys to Eagle victory are more on the holistic side of things, not necessarily on scheme, but my number 3 key to Eagles victory is the Eagles secondary has to find a way, if either through playmaking or design or a combination of both. We got to find a way to stop, as you mentioned, potential big plays. Tyreek Hill had a day the last time he stepped on the Lincoln Financial Field back in 2021, and I don't want to see him have another day there either again. So we got to find a way to not let them beat us. They got some really good wide receivers there, and we just got to limit that. Now, Tua is going to be a problem because he's going to move around the pocket. He's going to extend the plays, and the Eagles got to have that counterpunch. My number 2 key to Eagles victory is Jalen Hurts and Brian Johnson need to reconnect on that childhood level, get inside a room together, and come up with a formula on how they're going to win this football game, and get Jalen Hurts himself out in space. I don't see Jalen Hurts operating in space at all in 2023. It almost seems, Kyle, to me, they're trying to make him a pocket passer, and I hope that's not what I'm seeing, but they got to stop that and get Jalen Hurts back out in space where he can extend plays and keep the ball moving. And my number 1 key to Eagles victory is return to that 2022 form of not necessarily blowing teams away. I get what you're saying, but just being more of the superior, not only talented team on the field, but execution-wise on the field that the Eagles have really not done at all this season and have won games based on talent. And it's going to that check is coming due, and they got to clean that up, Kyle. So those are my 3 key to Eagles victory.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to together quick because this stretch of schedule is, I mean, the easy stretch of the schedule is it's over with, and I'm with you. I mean, they got to get it figured out, or it's going to things could go south on them pretty quick.
Absolutely. And with all that being said, Kyle, give me your prediction, your score, and don't tell me Jalen Hurts is your MVP.
Well, I mean, look, if there's anyone that bounces back in a way where he just sort of shakes off the last game, very un-Carson Wentz like, it's Jalen Hurts. So of course Jalen Hurts is going to have to be my MVP of this game. And I like how Vegas set the line. It's Eagles -2.5. I think the Eagles win by 2, so not necessarily cover. But I got them winning on a game-winning field goal, 26-24. And everyone's talking about how Sean Desai did an excellent job stopping that Miami offense. So give it to me.
26-24. Kyle Quinn got the Birds beating the Dolphins, and Jalen Hurts for the 6th time out of 7 weeks is your MVP choice of the week. My prediction, of course, is going more on the world of the rationale. I think this is not necessarily a shootout, like you said, but it's going to be a lot of offense, a lot of yards, a lot of field. I like the Dolphins in this game, 28-21, and I think Tua has a game. I think he throws for about 280 and 3 touchdowns. So I like the Dolphins 28-21 over the Eagles at the Link on Sunday night.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously hope this, but I think the Dolphins are a really good team. This is going to be their toughest challenge of the season yet. I just think the Eagles are going to be up to it. They're at home, and I think they really need to bounce back after the Jets. It's always good to get humbled sometimes.
And then my question of the week is pretty basic. Last week, the 49ers, as you mentioned, a lot of teams struggled around the league. 49ers fell from the ranks of the unbeaten as well. So the 72 Dolphins popped the champagne because there's no more unbeatens in the NFL. One of the earliest times of the year, I think, in a while that we've fallen away from the unbeatens. With Miami here this week, and with the potential, as you mentioned, the tougher part of the schedule, the Buffaloes, who are not playing that well, the Kansas Cities, the 49ers of the world are starting to kind of creep up further and further on the schedule. How important or how much of a measuring stick, or if at all, is this game for you, Kyle Quinn, in engaging the Eagles' current readiness as we get to the halfway point in the season?
Well, I mean, this game is pretty much everything, especially now that you've lost to the Jets. Like, you have an opportunity here to, like, say I went into this, like, these last 2 weeks and I said, you can pick the Eagles to win one game and lose one game. I would pick them to lose the Jets game and beat the Dolphins, because if you lose to the Jets and then beat the Dolphins, it's almost all gravy. Like, you can sort of just chalk it up and say that was fluky NFL, any given Sunday stuff, and they went out there and took care of business against a really good team. You beat the Jets and then you lose to the Dolphins, and then I know what me and you were sitting here talking about, like, are the Eagles really that good of a team? Are they a fraud? Or, you know what I mean? Are they paper tiger, this and that? They can really go out there and shut a lot of people up and prove to themselves, prove to us that, you know, they're for real. So this is a massive, massive opportunity for the Eagles here.
Yeah, it would shut me up for at least a week. I can tell you that much, and that's hard to do. But I'm willing to have it happen to me. So let's go for hopefully the Eagles get a win. Kyle Quinn, before I let you go, I do apologize. I will send you all these links to your Twitter. So, but I'm going to text you when I do, so I cover my base. But again, thank you for coming back, Kyle. I know it's kind of messed up. We're not doing this live right now, but hopefully next week we get back to live. Or you know what? No, hopefully we don't. Hopefully we roll this pre-recorded thing for a few more weeks out. That means the Phillies are still going and making a run for the World Series. So, Kyle, before I let you go, where can people find you and all that?
Yeah, just turn the dial to 94 IP. You know, catch me on there 10-2 with John Hill, and then on Twitter at Kyle _Quinn WIP. So that's where you'll find me every day.
All right, Kyle, my man. I'll see you next week, and go Birds.
Thanks, man. Go Birds, man.
All right, Kyle Quinn joins me here on the Birds Breakdown segment with Kyle Quinn, returning from a 2-week hiatus and giving me his insight as always, which is very valuable. Don't get me wrong. I don't really agree with like 98% of what he says, but I definitely think he knows what he's talking about in his own little fantasy land. But yeah, there's some issues with this football team. And Kyle is right on the money when he says that my question of the week basically is kind of was funneling where's the camera? It was funneling all my questions into the question of the week, which was, how important is Sunday's game against a team that, for the most part, is a true contender in the NFL this year? How important is going out there and performing, not necessarily spot on, flawless, but getting the win, or maybe combining some spot on flawless football with getting the win? And I think I agree with what Kyle had to say about that moving forward. So there's the Birds Breakdown with Kyle Quinn. Before we transition to my final topic, I do have to give you and reveal my Week 7 NFL picks, because we have hit that part of the show. So where was it? I just had it up here. Week 7 in the NFL. This was looking at it. Sorry about that, but here we go. Found it. In week 6, I finished that week the best week of my NFL season, 11-4 in week 6. So brings my record up to a 55-37 clip as we head into week number 7. And here are my picks for week 7 around the National Football League. As I mentioned, the Eagles, I think, lose on Sunday against the Miami Dolphins. I like Jacksonville against New Orleans. I like the Raiders on the road in Chicago. Cleveland, so I like Indy at home against Cleveland. Buffalo on the road against New England. Washington against the dumpster fire New York Giants on the road. Atlanta on the road against Tampa. Detroit beating Baltimore. The Rams over Pittsburgh in an old school 70s type of vibe game, right? The Seahawks over the Cardinals. Green Bay over Denver. Kansas City over the Chargers. And then your Monday night game is the San Francisco 49ers over the Minnesota. So there you have my week 7 picks for the 2023 season. And that leads me to my final topic of the night. And that, of course, is your Fly Guys, Philadelphia Flyers, who I mentioned are playing right now as I talk to you on Tuesday. But 1-1 right now so far into the early part of the season. And we've had some drama already. Morgan Frost was benched tonight, a healthy scratch. Everyone believes in response to kind of getting off to somewhat of a poor start offensively and defensively for Morgan, as he seems to be the new, I'm not going to say whipping boy of John Tortorella, but he's definitely seems to be the player that has to prove the most to the head coach as moving forward. And, I have every faith and confidence that Morgan Frost will rebound and handle this quite well. But this healthy scratch versus unhealthy scratch, this is going to be what the Flyers are this season. There's going to be players in and out of the lineup continuously. It's going to be based obviously on merit, on play. It's going to keep everybody hungry. I think it's going to keep everybody kind of trying to do their best in order to get playing time. I mean, that's the most basic fundamental of sports. You earn playing time, through your performance. And if you're not performing, you're not going to play. I mean, that's just the bottom line. And those are some of the benefits of having a team like the Flyers, where there's not many egos in the room. Everybody's there kind of on the same page or trying to fight and to be part of the future. You can move pieces around a lot, and you can really flex and stretch the room and really get the most out of everybody that you possibly can. Because if you hold the threat of not playing over a player's head, the majority of these young kids are not going to like that. So they're going to give you what they got to give you. But Morgan Frost was scratched tonight. So far, though, through 2 games, I'm not going to talk about the Canuck game right now. If you want to hear more about the Canucks game, make sure you're joining me tomorrow night, tonight at 6 o'clock. I will be giving you the Clear the Ice recapping the Canuck Flyer game. But right now on the season, the Flyers 1-1 through 2 games. They have gone 1 for 9 on the power play so far. For 11% efficiency, they've scored 6 goals, which is about 3 a game. They've given up 7 goals, 3.5. They've given up 58, or they've accumulated 58 shots, 29 a game, given up 64 for 32 a game. And that's pretty much your numbers for the Flyers. And we'll keep track of those throughout the year. And, of course, some extra stuff as we break into Clear the Ice and get ready really to hopefully focus here soon on more heavy hockey as we move on into the season here to start things in 2023 and 24. So, folks, that's going to wrap me up as a great show tonight. Welcoming back Kyle Quinn. Phillies, Red October in full swing as we're pushing for a return to the World Series for the 2nd straight year. Eagles looking to rebound against the Miami Dolphins, and your Fly Guys getting off the mat, hopefully, and getting off to a good start or a better start at the start of the season. But before I go, I want to say one thing before I leave. It's coming up on 2 years that I've been associated with the Edge of Philly Sports, and it has not been anything more than a great life-changing experience. And there's a lot of people out there to thank. Big Al, Joe Sheeran, Freddie Burns, Pat, Mike, Joe Marks, James Scores. Listen, all the guys that Bill and Chet, all the Chris Dives, Main Alliance, all those guys that make up the brotherhood of what EOP is. And there's no other organization that I want to be a part of than this one. This is the future of Philadelphia sports. And if you don't believe me, I know you believe me, but you're not listening hard enough. So Make sure you're checking out everything we have to offer. And here is our schedule real quick. Our weekend at a glance, dominated by the Phillies and some Eagles football as well on Sunday. Make sure you're checking everything out that we have. And Philly Sports Trips is always there for you to meet your Philly Sports Trips needs. Head over to www.phillysportstrips.com. Check out everything they have to offer. Dolan's Bar and Grill. Is it a bar and grill? I've never actually heard it say a grill, and I just added grill in there. I'm sorry, but it's Dolan's Bar down there, 24 East Sellers Ave in Ridley Park. Quizzo, music, great times, memorabilia giveaways. You never know who might walk through the front door. And if you have any issues with workman's comp, motor vehicle accidents, criminal law, personal injury, Dave Cherry at 610-565-0300 is the man you want to call. And hurry up, make sure you're getting those playoff tickets secured and get them secured over at Sherry's Ticket Town. No hidden fees, great prices. www.sherrystickets.com. Family owned and operated since 1946. Save an additional 10% when you enter the promo code EOP10. And folks, again, it's going to wrap me up. Until we talk again next week, or until you see me again on one of the assorted amounts of post-game shows that I'm on. That's the news, and I'm out of here.